record the computer. All right. We're just going to jump right in as we jump to 4 people. Again, thanks guys for coming on. I know it's Friday night and I know it's Memorial Day weekend, so I appreciate you guys taking time. We'll try to make it quick. It wasn't designed to be, a 90-minute presentation, just to give you guys an overview of what has become, I don't know if tradition is the right word, but this will be the 4th time going to Flanders in 2023 after a couple years layoff. So the experience is, especially as I get to know Flanders a little bit more and more, it just gets better and better each time. And this was our best trip this year. We actually had, I think 15 or 16 participants spread across 2 houses. And we were there from Ghent-Wevelgem all the way through what ended up actually being Amstel Gold, because they had swapped Amstel Gold and Roubaix. So 2 houses, 2 different venues, all in. It was still just an amazing experience. Obviously, a lot of these pictures will be from this year. And really, for me, the visual tells almost as much of the story as me talking about it. At the same time, we do have some visual. There's also a little video thing I'll show you in a bit. Yeah, there we go. Again, so on the upper left, and I won't go through all of these, obviously, because that would take a bunch of time, but upper left is the Amstel Gold race. The rest of it is mostly Flanders, although the center middle is also from up near Liège. We stayed up near Liège for the Amstel Gold. The rest of the stuff is, just some iconic images from Flanders. As you may have seen in the survey you did for me, we run this what I call team camp style, and for me that seems to be a great way to do it. What it means basically is we rent a big house, we share responsibilities, including cooking and bike prep and washing and stuff like that, and then we try to go out and ride just a ton of miles. I don't know, I didn't ride that much because I was actually injured this year, so I ended up doing mostly support. But I think our biggest riders did somewhere north of, in a 10-day trip, they did something north of 400 or 500 miles. So unlike a lot of tours where, they're kind of built on the idea of, 5-star experiences, I really wanted to do something different, and I wanted to make it about the riding and really about the community that we put together in doing this. And it's just been super successful. So we're going to take it another step further this year. And actually this year, as I said, was super special because not only do we have a great group of guys, both houses, but we actually lucked into some amazing experiences that we will be able to replicate this year. And I think the biggest of those is the chance to ride with Johan Museeuw across Roubaix. So we did 2 rides, I think 2 or 3 rides with Johan. He was friends with one of the guys on the last trip, and came out and rode with us just casually one day, and then we went to dinner, and then he met us at the Arenberg Forest, and we rode from Arenberg to the Roubaix Velodrome with him across all the sectors. Wow. And I figure if you're on this Zoom, you're probably a fan of cycling and probably a fan of Johan just on reputation alone. I can say he's a really good guy, just a great guy. So if that's the highlight, I'd say that's a pretty good highlight, but I don't know if it was even the highlight. I think it was definitely the high point, perhaps, riding Flanders with him and just seeing, even I think he's 55 now, something like that. And he's just smooth as butter. He's taking videos with his one hand off the bar on his phone and shooting it. And, we had a pretty good group. I mean, all the guys that went were pretty strong riders and pretty accomplished. And he still just made it look as effortless as anything. So it's just amazing. So that's a high point. The other one, we get the thrill of riding Stein Vandenberg, who was on Deceuninck Quickstep, just retired a couple of years ago. He didn't ride with us, but we rode out to his house and he hosted us for lunch. Nice. I'm not saying for sure that all of these things that we did this year are going to happen next year, but we've already started conversations with those guys. And actually, Dave Kaus, who is the guy that knows Quickstep because he imports Quickstep flooring, to NorCal, he said that Denik Stibar wants to ride with us too. So nothing's set in stone until we get it.
Wow.
But at the same time, that adds a certain element. And I'm also, I'm working right now on Alpecin Phoenix through, I did some work with TRP, and TRP was a longtime sponsor of Alpecin Phoenix through their cross team. And so we're still friends with the team. And so we're trying to pull strings with those guys, but more than likely it'll come down to, maybe get in ride with some of their non-classics riders. I'll do my best, but I'm not certain I can pull Matthew Vanderpool out to a ride with us. But we'll certainly try.
Worth a try, yeah.
It's certainly worth a try. And
it'd be a big draw.
Yeah. And it's just, serendipity is the only word I can think of. We kind of lucked into Johan, and he came out and rode with us. And same thing with Stein, and he was just a great host. And it was so funny because we showed up his house and he had sandwiches and beer, because beer's endemic in Belgium, and was just the nicest guy, just out of the cuff, just because he's friends with Dave. So hopefully that works out again. Just a few more pictures. The center middle is, or the center lower, sorry, is, as I mentioned, one of the groups came and did Ghent-Wevelgem and Flanders, and the other came and did Flanders and Amstel. So these are some shots. And actually the upper right is from Remco Evenepoel's fan club bar, which is at the base of the Muur de Gerhardsbergen. So it's a great place. Now we're friends with them. They have our water bottle on their wall. So as I said, each year it gets a little better, just because you kind of ingrain yourself with the group a little bit more, with the culture a little bit more. And Flanders is totally unique, and it's just the best time of year to be there. So I'm excited to go back, just because we have a couple of housing options, and I call them the small group housing and the big group housing, depending on how many people sign up. This is where the first group stayed, and it's 3 kilometers outside of Oudenaarde, so really centrally located. And in fact, on the week between Wevelgem and Flanders, I believe on Wednesday, I think it's Dwarsdorp-Vlaanderen. Dwarsdorp-Vlaanderen goes by this house literally on a cobbled section that's 200 meters from the house. So, the guys walked down, we shot video, and then we came back in and watched it on TV. The house was great. They took really good care of us. And actually, because on the Sportief days, so the Flanders Sportief, there's different options. We usually choose, partly from logistics and partly from common sense, we usually choose it's about 100-mile version. You can actually ride the full version, which is 260 kilometers. I think it's 225 kilometers off that route, but it's pretty close to the full route. But you have to go to Antwerp to start. And I always thought that was just a little bit of a hassle, where the other ones start from and finish in Oudenaarde. So we did that. And because I want to say somewhere between 12 and 15,000 people a year do the Flanders Sportief. So as you can imagine, restaurants are a little bit hectic for reservations and stuff. So actually our hosts made us the most spectacular spaghetti dinner for that night. And it was so good. We actually got 2 or 3 meals out of it. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, creating a community within the house and kind of doing that team camp style. So that particular night we stayed at home after the Sportief, ate there. Other nights we went to, I don't know how much you guys know or care about Trappist beer, but we went to the St. Sixtus brewery for dinner, which is one of these pictures somewhere. I think, no, maybe the next one. And, it's so crazy. It's, again, I'll just sort of regale you with anecdotes. So we went to St. Bernardus, and we went twice. We went for dinner once, and it was great, but obviously the gift shop wasn't open. So the other group, we went back the next week, a couple of days later, as part of a riding day. I think we'd done Roubaix that day. And so we went for lunch, and it was still open. So I went in, and I'm like, oh, I'll get a couple things, a couple glasses. And I think I got a 4-pack of St. Sixtus beer, the 12, which I don't really know beer, but I know St. Sixtus is a good beer. I don't know the differences between the 8 and the 12. they're distinct apparently. And I think it was 2 glasses and a 4-pack of beer. I think it was like €12. And I came back to the US and someone had posted a picture of it on the shelf at a liquor store in the US. Same pack, 4-pack, $24. So if you like beer, I guarantee you we'll get you your fill of beer. No problem. And it's just, the other one we're working on, the first year we did this in 2017 as a group with a lot of the same guys, actually. We went to Delirium. And again, because we happened to know someone there, we got a private tour in the evening, and we had, they're like, gave us full access to the bar. And taught us how to draw the different types of beers and clean the glass and all this, just stuff that you look back and you're like, wow, that was really
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
We try to create
That's really
those kind of experiences every day if we can. And that doesn't even begin to talk about the riding. And I think one of my favorite realizations this time, and I said next year will be the 4th time I've done it, was actually starting to put together where you are in Flanders on the courses, right? Because on the sportif day or just riding around, it gets so busy and so much is going on that you may recognize a segment, the Paterberg or the Tyenberg, but knowing where those are in relation to where you're staying or where you've been on the roads didn't really start to gel for me until this year. And it's just so cool when it starts to gel, because oh my gosh, I know that now, we had lunch at this great little place called Bergs and Cobbles, which we'll probably go back to. And it's right around the corner from the Steenbeck trees, I think. Anyway, and that connects to another hill. And you start to put these routes together and these segments together. And it's if you're a bike nerd, and obviously you can tell by my enthusiasm, kind of a bike nerd, it's revelatory. It's just so much fun. So if we're a small group, and small group is, kind of 10 people or less, I think we can probably run the trip for about the same cost with 8 people. And this house is a little bit less expensive than the one I'll show you next. But 10 is kind of the optimal number, because then we can sort of leverage ourselves and, find deals and take advantage of the group a little bit. So to back up just a second, when you guys fly into Brussels, we'll pick you up at the airport. It's a super easy entry and exit. Pop right outside. We usually have a couple of vans, one big box van for all the stuff, and a passenger van. Again, depending on numbers and how it works out, and I'll cover some of that as we go. We'll pick you up, take you to Oudenaarde, do a first ride that day. This is the big house. I say that because the other one sleeps 10, 11 if we stretch it. This sleeps 16 easily. It's just massive house. And actually the second group stayed here. And this is actually in Ronse, which is about 15 kilometers from Oudenaarde. And weirdly enough, is a completely different experience. Oudenaarde is very surrounded by farms and fields and really tiny roads out in the middle of these fields. And Ronse is much hillier. And actually this is in a town called Ellezell, which we didn't know at the time, but apparently is famous for 2 things. One, it's the birth town of Hercule Poirot, which was a character. I think Agatha Christie had Hercule Poirot. Right. He's from Ellezell. Yeah. And it's famous as being a haven for witches in the 1700s, I think. So very similar to Salem. So around town, there'll be, so now they've taken that and made this sort of there's tourist thing. So there's lots of tourist, references to witchcraft and witchery and so forth. It's not freaky weird. It's just an interesting historical reference. But this house is a converted factory. It's simply gorgeous. Underneath here is a sauna. And this is the main room. This is this room here. And it has, I think, 6 bedrooms. And obviously some of those are built out again in that team camp style where you'll have roommates. And there's a couple that we may do, luck of the draw on getting the single rooms. Again, I try not to do these like all the other tour companies do where, if you want a private room, we have a supplement for $500. And, We definitely 3-star, 4-star, 5-star where we eat and what we eat when we cook at home. But I'm more interested in getting out on the road and having the experience than I am in, sleeping in a super nice hotel in Oudenaarde. And so that's why we kind of go with this group think. And so it works great bringing a small team or a bunch of friends together, because there's a built-in camaraderie. But even if it's strangers, the camaraderie develops pretty quickly because you're in Belgium. So this is our second house option. Again, a little bit outside of Ronse and about 15K from Oudenaarde, but literally I think it's like 7K, maybe 10 kilometers from the Quermont. And if you look at the course, it actually winds through Ronse. And so it goes pretty close to the house, as do several other races. So in the time we were there, I think there were 2 or 3 others. Dwarsdoor and E3 Harelbeke, I think, went on also in that 10-day block for the first group. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, right. Daily schedule, and this is rough cut. Everything's up in the air, and what we do is over the course of, one of the reasons we're starting so early with this process of getting people enthused and signed up is so that we can get those houses. As you can imagine, housing becomes quite the sought after thing come this turn of the year. So I try to be ahead of the curve so we can get a little bit better rate, and we can also secure the house. So the daily schedules are built here as kind of a reference, but at the same time, we'll work together to come up with the actual choices we make, right? I'm pretty participatory in that process. We'll definitely have GPS files for you guys and give you a bunch of information, but we really want, you to participate in the process. And, if you really want to do a ride around Bruges, which is a gorgeous, amazing, beautiful city, then that's no problem. We can schedule that. But if we kind of, it's a little bit democratic, which I know sounds a little anathema in America right now, but democracy still works for bike riding. So, you come in the first day and we might do a little shakeout ride, 20, 30 miles. It's a fascinating experience to first ride cobbles. If you've never ridden them, especially actual cobbles in actual Belgium, just because your first pass, it's a shock to the system. And 3-4 days in, it's butter. So we'll go out and do a little ride. Then we usually do a short Flanders recon. The Quermont, the Paderberg, and the Koppenberg are all within a pretty close proximity. So we can usually knock that off. There's a fair bit of adjustment for most people coming over because it's 8 or 9 hours ahead, depending on where you're flying from. But it's worked really well to come in on the Thursday before the Saturday Sportif, and then do a couple rides, get a little adaptation to the time change. And so by the Flanders ride, the Sportif on Saturday, most people feel pretty good and they've had a couple decent nights sleep. You still may wake up at odd hours, but I'm presuming most of you guys have probably traveled more than I have. So you kind of know it's par for the course. But we go ride Flanders. Again, we usually default to, it ends up being about 100 miles. The course we choose, the way they changed the race in the last, a few years ago, they took the mirror to Gerhardsbergen and put it at I think it's about 150 kilometers out or 100 kilometers from the finish. And so it's not nearly as iconic as it used to be when it was, the second to last climb before the finish. The route we choose usually doesn't include that. So we kind of sneak off course and go do it on our own. So it ends up being, I think the course itself is more like 90 miles as built. And it ended up being about 105 both times for the guys to go out and do it. And I would definitely encourage you guys, if you go, and we'll again cover all this stuff on the run in, but it was really cold this year, like really cold. So, plan ahead, figure it's Belgium in the spring. And yeah, it's been great weather the last few years, but the potential is always there for trouble. And then on Sunday, again, from the house to the course is really close. So we usually have the riders, catch a bus from Oudenaarde out to the Quermont. And there's a great big party on the Quermont, and you can literally walk to the Paderberg in about 10 minutes. And so we usually set up and do those two locations, and they both have big jumbotrons, and they have lots of beer and frites and tons of people. And it's the quintessential Tour of Flanders race experience. And it's, it's a 10-minute bus ride from where we're at. So it always works out really well.
Nice.
After
And then
that,
how many times do they do the Paderborn and Quermont?
they
Do they
do
do
the
it
Quermont,
2 or
I
3
believe the
times?
Quermont 3 times and the Paderborn at least twice. I
Okay,
believe the
so
Paderborn twice.
no real reason to, once you're there, no real reason to move.
Yeah,
they
and
go
so
by the
some
time.
guys, especially because of the proximity this time, the first year we went, we stayed in Kortrijk, which is about 30 kilometers away, and more kind of centered around the Ghent-Wevelgem race. But this year, some guys actually rode their bikes out to the Koppenberg and watched. Again, it was pretty chilly on race day, not terrible, but so it's a really easy place to see the race a bunch of times. That, like I said, they come over the Quermont 3 times, and the Paderborg's like a 10-minute walk. So it just works out really well logistically, as opposed to trying to chase the race. Flanders is a much harder race to follow in a car, for example, than Roubaix, because Roubaix is sort of point to point, whereas Flanders wanders all over. And here's a fun one. So let me just finish. So we go that day, usually that's kind of a rest day, race day. We may go out and do a 20-mile ride or 25-mile ride. Really, we leave it up to you. We try to give you guys options. But then that week following, we say, okay, maybe we do a Ghent-Wevelgem day on Monday, or we're supposed to ride with Stein Vandenberg again, and maybe he takes us and shows us some of the hidden Flanders roads. And then the Wednesday of that week, usually Wednesday or Thursday, we go ride Roubaix. And knock on wood, I actually traded voicemails with Johan a couple of days ago, and he was enthusiastic about coming out and riding with us again. Usually that was on a Wednesday with him, whereas it was Thursday the day before. And I've got a couple of polls that I'm going to do shortly, although it's the first time I've run polls, so you'll have to excuse me if I don't execute them well. But I want to take a moment and show you just a real quick little thing. So I presume you guys can still see my screen. So this is from, and I tried to optimize this, but this Johan shot this. So we met him at the head of the Arenberg Forest, the entry, rode with him, and then that night we had dinner at a place called St. Cornel, which is amazing also. And in the interim, Johan went home and created this for us.
Like always, we start here at Arenberg. That's the beginning. That's for also the riders the beginning of the race. Yeah, from here it's 100k to the finish. So we start here. So they're kissing the cobblestones behind me. They're kissing the cobblestones. That's kissing. Look, they're kissing the cobblestone.
It'll turn to cursing.
It's amazing. Flanders-Roubaix.
Starts with a kiss.
The obligatory flat. We can expect that one flat. And the only downside of starting this Arenberg Forest is you're not warm. But depending on, again, we have the option to start the Fairfield Garage and make it a first of the medium there, or we can just do all of that. That was his follow driver. He does it, yeah, the follow driver. And it's a long I don't know where he got this. I thought it was really nice of him to do this. So one of the coolest parts, to go back to my little presentation part here, one of the coolest parts was, well, there's a million cool parts. One of the cool parts was we get to the velodrome and do the lap and, take pictures and all this stuff. And because we're with Johan Museu, we went to the cafe. And of course, he's infamous there. And so we got to go to the showers, which are you usually don't get to go to the showers, but he got us into the shower. So we took pictures of his shower with 3 victories and had some beer and espresso at the cafe, and talked to the locals, these old French guys that have probably worked there for 25 years. And they just started trading stories and just having a great time. And it was just, just huge. So to have that experience was great. And again, no guarantee that they're going to even be open when we go there, but fingers crossed they are. And we'd have the same opportunity to see the showers, which I got to be honest, the showers were pretty cool, but it wasn't really on my list of things I need to do. At the same time, it was pretty cool. So we get done with that. We get done with Flanders, and then we get into that second week. And so this is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the 7th, 8th, 9th on the calendar. I left an open day. The first year, a lot of riders, and actually this year too, it gets to be a lot. So pacing yourself so that you're good for the days you want to be good is a really smart thing. There's other stuff to do. There's the Flanders Museum in Oudenaarde, which is, like I said, 3 kilometers away. They have a good lunch, but the chef is kind of picky. He only wants to cook certain things. So the host was like, "Oh, I don't think you should order that because the chef's not going to want to cook it." So it's very Belgian. And then we do the Roubaix Sportif. And I can't begin to tell you the difference between the Flandrian cobbles and the Roubaix cobbles, but it's substantial and in an abusive way. The Roubaix cobbles are much harsher, especially starting on the Arnberg. They're just harsher, they're older, they're rougher, you can see by this picture on the right this is the top of the Paterberg here. You can see how nicely laid they are. And, the farmer, the history is, or the story is, this farmer owned the land and wanted the race to come by. So he basically created the Paterberg. So it's nicely laid, and it's still hard cobbles, but compared to Roubaix, it's like riding on, nicely paved tarmac. And then we do the Sportif. The first year you have the option to do all of the cobbled sections. So it ends up being about 100 miles. Go figure. The upside is you get to do all the sections. And I think there were 29 that year, and there's usually 28 to 30 in a given year. The downside is you have to get there at like 5 a.m. at the Roubaix Velodrome, which means we left pretty early. From Kortrijk to Roubaix is, like 20 kilometers. But from Oudenaarde to Roubaix is a little longer. It's probably 40 minutes. So if people opt to do that, which is totally fine, we'll either set up and drop you guys there and then pick up the end, or what we usually opt to do is do the one from the Roubaix Velodrome. It rides out on a circuitous course that doesn't have a ton of cobbles, and again starts at Arnberg and comes in. And that ends up being pretty close to 100 miles also. It's way less abusive. I got done, and I think it's a really common refrain. You get done with all 29 segments of Roubaix cobbles, and I never wanted to see a cobble again. Everything hurts. It's brutal. It's a hard day. But like a week later, you kind of start jonesing for it a little bit, and you're like, I kind of miss that. So I'm currently undecided of my own desire to do all of the segments, but it's an option. It just changes the logistics of the day a little bit, in that you're getting up early and heading out, and you're in for a long day. And with those, we usually try to have, with the Roubaix one, we usually try to have dinner out afterwards. So, which goes back to the team camp motif, which is, I think, and there's a thing later, I think we do, 5 dinners at home and 4 out. Most of the lunches are out on the road, and most breakfasts, I think all of the breakfasts are at home. Another thing that I take a fair bit of pride in running these trips is we cover pretty much all of the food for you guys. I think we cover all the dinners because there's only like 9 dinners. I think it's 5 and 4. As a group, it's obviously we're doing a little shopping, doing a little cooking. Although, let's see if we can do my first poll. Whoops, darn it. I warned you guys I wasn't adept at these things. We'll go here. We'll get rid of that. Polls, okay. Okay, so dining preferences, and you guys should, I believe, here, let's launch this. Like I said, I've never done this before. We can hire a professional chef. It's about $30 a day a person, so it gets to be kind of expensive. However, they are available. At the same time, the current mix has worked really well for 3 iterations of this. So you guys can vote if you'd like to. You don't have to vote. At the same time, if you want to get the full-on chef experience, we can definitely take care of that. It just costs us a little more money. And for me, that's sort of the give and take, right? Is we can do anything we want. We can go and, we have the option to do VIP days with Quick Step at a couple of races, E3 and Dwarsdor. Totally an option. I think it was about $250 a person. So a couple of guys opted in and a lot of guys opted out, but it's an option. Again, big thing is we have the chances for you guys to do it, and all it takes is money. At the same time, one of our guys, and we're pretty sure he got to go into the E3 VIP the last day, and this isn't to dissuade you, but it's more of an anecdotal frustration. The last day you had, at the time we went, you had to go through the COVID protocol to get back in the US, and he tested positive on the last day. So he had to stay an extra 10 days. Fortunately for him, 2 things. One, he could stay with us in the second group at the other house for, I think, about 6 of those days, because we were there another 5 days before we went to Liège. And he was only really sick for about 12 hours. But to his telling, it was pretty damn sick and he wouldn't want to repeat it. Fortunately or hopefully, COVID's not an issue next year. At the same time, I can say from personal experience, for something completely different, I ended up at the ER in Oudenaarde, and I was having a foot problem. So I went to the ER, saw 2 specialists, went back the next day and got an MRI and medications, and it cost me 220 euros all in. So there's something to be said for nationalized medicine in Belgium. Anyway, like I said, mostly I'm just giving you guys the anecdotes as we go along. Roubaix is a much easier race to sort of chase. Having said that, and having chased it a couple of times, we're looking, if we chase it, we'd probably do the Arenberg Forest and the Carrefour del Arbre. So the Arenberg is, I believe, 18 segments from the end, and the Carrefour is the 4th from the end. So there's enough time between those that we can get what we need to get. They're really the two of the 3 most iconic places to see it. And so if we opt to chase, we'd probably do that. And that seems the best. The other thing I've done is I've done it just from the Carrefour, where you have a little more leisurely start to the morning, and went for a ride. And then we rolled over around noon and still had plenty of time to see the race come by. And actually, and I don't know if it's the same now, the juniors race was the same day. So they came by a little bit earlier, and I'm waiting to see, because they didn't have it this year. But with the women's race on Saturday, my guess is the Roubaix Sportive is actually probably on the 7th, on that Friday, which would make the Saturday, we could go see the women's race, or we could do a different ride. Again, we'll sort that all out as we get there. But it's a much easier way to chase the race at Roubaix because it's point to point. Okay. That's the gist of what we're talking about logistically as an overview. Obviously, we have a lot of stuff to solve between now and next April, but that's why I start almost a year ahead, is because we want to get it right. Trip overview, 11 days, 2 monuments. We're looking right now at offering, much like we did this year, you could do the Ghent-Wevelgem. Ooh, that might be actually one of my polls. The Ghent-Wevelgem Roubaix trip, or you could do the Flanders, Ghent-Wevelgem Flanders, or you could do the Flanders-Roubaix trip. depending on numbers, we may be able to run the same kind of 2-house option. And there's even a third option we're looking at that is the Roubaix through, Amstel Gold through Liège. So it'd start a week later, more like the 14th or 15th of April in Liège, and we'd stay in that area more. So it'd be a little bit more Ardennes based. But we'll see. That one just kind of came to me because we had a really good time at Amstel Gold. And we previously had done a Liège day where we went up and actually parked at the top of the Mur de Huy from Flèche Wallonne, which is as steep as it looks, and did this big 110-mile ride that included a bunch of the famous climbs in Liège, the Redoute and the Stocktow. And at the time, it was a different finish, so we got to do that last little, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a little steep urban climb that used to be about 5 kilometers from the finish. And I think that's taken out of the route now, but we can always put it back in. But that's, again, another option of stuff we're looking to do, probably in the same ballpark on trip cost. I try to assuage the pain a little bit by doing deposits. So a $750 deposit to hold the spot. And that frees up some cash to be able to go, right? Because I'm not a giant Trek travel provider. But it lets us make the reservations if we do the deposit early, holds the spot, and then give you guys the option if you wanted to spread it over 3 other payments to pay it off by the 1st of February. We'll get to the cancellation policy in just a second. But like I said, we pick you up. We do the sportifs, the ride files. The Castelli kit, I'm going to back up a couple of slides. We are sponsored by Castelli on Penbello. So the Castelli was really nice to us and gave us, we actually did the design in-house, but there's the option, we'll obviously do Castelli again, unless Johan Museo gets us a killer deal through, he's sponsored by L'Ecole. If they give us a great deal, that's fine. What we did this year was the trip, quote unquote, the trip, had put aside about $1,000, so about $100 a person towards a excuse me, a trip gift before we knew we were going to do the Castelli. And then once we did Castelli, we ended up doing jersey shorts and vests. And I think the total cost was around $250. So the riders were in for about $150 extra that I hadn't budgeted. So that's actually part of the existing budget for this trip, which is why this trip's a little bit more expensive than last year. I think last year was about $2,600. But Johan Museu, we try to, if he does it for free, which normally he's about 1,500 euros a day. If he does it for free, we felt that it was well worth our effort as a group. We kind of put some money together and paid him, I think, about half that. Again, we built some of that into the trip cost. If you guys wanted to do an extra gratuity, that's fine. But we put in, I think, about $600 or $700 in the trip cost towards things like riding with Johan or Stein. So again, that's one reason this trip is a little bit more expensive than last year. Having said that, I encourage you guys to look around and look at other trips that are doing what I consider to be much less riding at the minimum, and are much more focused on sort of the 5-star experience. And I think the cheapest one is about 3,800, and most of them are more like $5,000. So, you know, when it comes to cost, I'm super cheap, like most bike racers. I'd rather have, you know, save a little money and have a little more personal experience than try and, you know, shuffle you guys around and, you know, stay in hotels and have expensive breakfasts and stuff. For me, it's more about the riding and the time with my
Yeah, I love
friends.
that. Love the team camp kind of style. I think that would be a great thing. Plus,
Yeah, it's worked out really great.
Interested
I mean, you know,
riding the roads for sure.
and the other option we have, and, you know, so we can look at a professional chef, but by coincidence, my 17-year-old daughter is currently working on her chefness. So I'm trying to convince her to come and cook for us. But worst case scenario, we'll figure out ahead of time what we're doing. And that logistic stuff mostly falls to me, and any staff, quote unquote, staff that I bring, which is either my daughter or Dave. Again, depending on if we end up in the small house, it'd probably be just me and my daughter perhaps. But if we do the big house or the split trip, we'd have a little bit more staff on site to take care of that. But as I said, I think we cover all the dinners, most of the lunches, some of the lunches, you know, the sportif days you're eating on the road. Ride days we're usually out, so we stop at the cafes along the way, and it works out great. and we cover about half those from the trip costs. Same thing with the Castelli kit. We built that in. We have the option to stick with the design that we came up with last year, which is, it looks gorgeous. It's that blue with kind of the reddish orangish highlights. We'd obviously change the kit a little bit so that it reflected the current trip as opposed to last year. But I thought the design was great. At the same time, if we want to make our own, it just takes a little creativity, and we can dive into that when we're a little more solid on who's going where. And honestly, you know, the shared responsibilities when it came to bike maintenance and some driving sometimes, it worked out really well, and everyone had a great attitude about it. So most of the guys that this trip is going to appeal to are hardcore enough riders that A, the mileage isn't going to be the intimidator, although you're definitely going on train. And B, you know, they're about the experience more than the sort of fluff. And it sounds like at least a few guys on the call are the same. So I think that's pretty much the gist. I did want to give you guys some context on if you had to opt out. And again, these are they're a little longer lead times than some of the other companies have. They have sort of, you know, a 30-day, although in fairness, and I've looked at a fair number of cancellation policies, I think this one's on par. The difference is a lot of companies, we had a number of guys had to cancel this year. So we had the big house because we originally had 12 guys, and I think 6 guys had to cancel within the last like 45 days or so. What I did is, because everyone ends up being friends on these trips, it's less about business, quote unquote, than it is about having a great experience. So the guys that canceled, we try to get them on the following year's trip and basically carry over most of whatever they put. So where it says, you know, 100% on rider transfer, if we fill the spot, that's the, you know, the legalese of it. At the same time, presuming that we can continue to run this kind of trip or do the same thing, I would put whatever you guys put towards the cost towards future trips, up to and including that 60-day cutoff. After that, things get pretty locked in. For me, again, it's really about, you know, what my fixed costs are versus any sort of, you know, nefarious plan to gyp you guys or anything like that. That's not my style. Having said that, I would also really encourage trip insurance. And as a group, we can actually buy trip insurance. It's everyone's on board. But when I was looking around, it was between 125 and 250 a person, depending on how much coverage you wanted, how old you are, and how soon into the process it is, right? Obviously, if you're 2 weeks out, it gets more expensive. Same thing with the bike rentals. We had a number of guys that ended up renting bikes, and you got to be on that really early. So we'll give you all the details for that. But at the same time, generally, especially with the 2 vehicles, traveling with the bike works pretty well and is pretty effortless. Most airlines, knock on wood, are either free now for bikes or cheaper. I think I paid $100 one way and didn't get charged the other way. And there's also the backdoor way of Oru, O-R-U, makes a case that basically is the same dimensions as a regular piece of luggage. So you have to disassemble the bike, but I've had that case since 2015. And I think I've only paid airline fees maybe 3 or 4 times. But you got to kind of sell it like, you know, don't show up with your, you know, I love Roubaix and your team jacket and all that stuff. You got to sell it like you're, you know, it's just a regular piece of luggage. So we can send you some videos on how to do that. The guy that runs Oru, Isaac Howe, used to be a pro. So he's got lots of pro trips on how not to pay the airline fees. Again, presuming most of you guys are like most bike racers and you're like, man, I hate spending money on stuff like that. I just want to go ride. So that's the small text, harsh reality if you have to cancel. And one of my guys, unfortunately, he had to cancel like 2 weeks out. So we're trying to get him on this trip and carry what he had put towards it. Actually, 2 guys put that towards this trip as well. So I'm pretty amenable to trying to make sure that we have a good cancellation policy and that it really suits you guys and addresses the problems moving forward so we can get you on the trip. Tom, who was on the 2017 trip and had to cancel, ended up going on this trip. And I think all I paid for was the sportifs, and like maybe $250 other. I think he spent $750 for the whole trip, something like that. So anyway, guys, that's my spiel. I'm happy to entertain any questions or let you know anything else I can. So let me know.
Yeah, when do
Yes.
you, this is George.
Hi, George.
When do you take deposits? And another question is, can you talk a little bit about renting a bicycle?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have one, but I have to get a case and I'm just not sure.
Yeah, and the guys that rented bicycles had good experiences. By and large, there are a couple of really big companies that you set it up if you set up early enough. So to start from your first question, we'll start taking deposits June 1st, and then hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be full by October 1st because both the sportifs or most of the sportifs open their registrations around October 1st, between October 1st and November 15th, so that we can get in early and do the group registration for the sportifs, and also secure the housing. That's why I want to get on it early. So that's why I'm starting June 1st, excuse me. So opening day is June 1st. I should have you guys' emails because you're on this thing and you were nice enough to jump through my hoop of doing a survey. So I'll get that information out to you promptly. It's just through my website. It's super easy. As for renting bikes, like I said, if we're on it early and we know a couple of vendors, it works out really easy because they literally picked up the bikes from the hotel in Oudenaarde, right downtown. And one guy actually dropped the bike back to that hotel. And the other guy was on the trip that went to Amstel Gold. And so he took the bike with him and left it at Amstel Gold because the bigger companies, they kind of do bike rentals for all of the spring classics. And almost all of the races have a sportif, which goes to, if you've done Flanders and Roubaix, that's one of the reasons we did Ghent-Wevelgem was the chance to do the Wevelgem sportif, which was great. It was a really fun day. And same thing with Amstel. So it's a chance to do something different. There's even the chance to do some of the midweeks. I think, unfortunately, the week between Flanders and Roubaix, the midweek race is called Schelderprijs, which is pretty flat and not terribly exciting. But the week before, it's the E3 and the Dwarsdorp Vlaanderen. So both of those have sportifs and both of those have VIP experiences. And they're just a little more Belgian. Schelderprijs, you can go watch it on GCN or on YouTube. It's pretty flat. It's sort of a sprinter's classic. At the same time, if that's of interest and you want to do more, the other thing we're looking at doing too is, again, as we start to get a little more familiar with the area, we're hoping this year to maybe do some group rides with like a local team. My hope is we can do a ride with the Alpecin guys, but there's tons of local Belgian teams and tons of local Belgian rides. So if that's of interest, we're hoping we can maybe get a group ride in with the Belgians while we're there. So
Be great. Yeah,
George, I hope that answered your question.
it does. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions I can help with? And again, I'm totally available. You just have to, easiest thing is to send me an email or a text. If you want my phone number, I'll give you my phone number. And really, it's a long ways out. It seems like a long ways out to be like, geez, it's 10 months to the race, but man, it goes by fast.
Yeah.
It just flies by. So my hope is that we can nail these things down pretty quickly between June and July, so I can start making reservations and holding on to stuff. And actually the gal, funnily enough, the house we stayed at in Oudenaarde, they had never hosted anything like us before, as you can imagine. Really nice people. And I'll tell you two stories, and I apologize because I'm really talky about these kind of things, but so we stayed at the house and they hadn't hosted bikers before and it went really well. And like I said, they made us a spectacular spaghetti dinner. And she's really great. The lady of the house, her name's Karine. When I had to go to the hospital, she used to be a nurse. So she actually called me like 3 times just to make sure everything was going okay. So she's a super nice gal. But she was talking to one of the trip participants about something else when Johan Museu showed up. And she immediately knew who it was and was like, oh my God. And that was the experience with Johan. It was like running around with Michael Jordan. Everywhere we went, Johan. I just insane.
Belgium.
and just so fun, just so fun. So, okay, I'll try to make those my last two anecdotes, but it's the kind of trip where, like I said, you finish all those cobbles and you're like, God, if I never see a cobble again, I'm gonna be fine. And 2 weeks later, you're like, man, I kind of want to go back.
Yeah.
So it gets in your blood. It's
Yep.
just I've done a number of, I've done the Alps. I've been to the Taiwan KOM. I've ridden in China for the UCI cyclocross. We're looking at going to Spain. It's the best cycling experience I've had in a 10-day trip. It's just awesome. And so I figured, we'll offer it out there and hopefully you guys have the same experience because it's just spectacular.
Yeah. I'm friends with Dan Van Acker and we've been talking about
Yeah.
this for a while.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the best, actually one of the guys, Manko, brought his son. Some of the pictures you saw, there was the kid with the blue bike who's 18. And that's the reason we did the Ghent-Wevelgem because that was a spring break. And so, going with a friend or two friends or six friends adds a whole bunch to it. But at the same time, like I said, spend 4 or 5 days with someone riding cobbles and presuming they're half decent people, you're going to get along.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome. So yeah, I hope we have some groups, at least small groups. And we'll see. I'm not doing a ton of marketing. I mean, it may seem like that on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook hardly ever. At the same time, there are, a couple of groups. I don't know if you guys know who Dan Smith is, but he's another coach, Sport Velo. I'm trying to get Dan, and I'm not sure if Dan's even on this call. He may be.
Yeah.
Dan, are you on this call?
Looks like it's on.
Maybe not.
I'm here.
But,
I'm here.
hey, Dan.
Hey, Matt.
Getting, guys with contacts or friends, it works out great. So anyway, like I said, I could regale you with stories. I will say one other thing. So this line of Flanders, one of my favorite mementos is the first year I went was 2015 or 2016. And you walk into the Claremont and they spend like 2 weeks building this VIP section and putting up all the vendors and stuff. And one of the first things you walk into is this guy selling flags. They're about, 24 by 24 line of Flanders flags, and they're €5. And so I'm like, okay, I'll take one. So I got my 2 Flanders flags. I didn't get one this year actually, because it was too cold and I was injured. But I got my Flanders flags hanging in my room, and I've got, we always try to get the medals. And if you take your numbers, so they give you numbers, and the numbers have a deposit. I think it's a €10 deposit. You give the number back, you get a Flanders, We Ride Flanders t-shirt. So I've got a couple of those. Again, it's just these little things that you get to carry around with you. Same with Roubaix. And you're like, oh yeah, I did Roubaix. It was super cool. So anyway, any other questions or comments or requests?
I think
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. It covers it for me. You got me excited. I was already excited coming into this, but sounds great.
It's a really worthwhile thing to be excited about. And like I said, my hope is that we can get enough people that we have, like, the small house is great. Oh, I was going to say, so we went and set up with this gallop. It's called Hof van Ein, 3 kilometers outside Oudenaarde, perfect little venue. In the month and a half since I got back, I touched base with her. I said, hey, we think we want to come back and do it again. And she said, that's great. That's super cool. I have 3 other teams interested. Oh, by the way, I raised the rates. I'm like, aren't you a smart businesswoman?
Yeah.
Here's the caveat to that. And I don't know the timeline and nothing's guaranteed, but my now good friend, Johan Museu, is opening a cycling center. In fact, let me go back because this is just really cool. He's opening a cycling center. So this right here is called Watermelon Strat. So everything's strat because that's street. So this is Watermelon Strat. And as soon as I heard the word Watermelon Strat, I was like, I got to go ride that climb. It's a sweet, hard little climb that coincidentally connects to, when you watch Flanders and they drop down to the Paterberg, as they're dropping down, the Watermelon Strat comes up on the left, just before the big left turn, or just after the big left turn off of the main road they drop down, they take another left turn. Right there is where this road comes up. And this is the top of the Watermelon Strat. And we found out riding with Johan, he's like, yeah, I'm opening a cycling center. I'm like, oh, can we go see it? Well, it's right at the base of this road. So the Watermelon Strat is literally the entry point to Johan Museu's new cycling. He's calling it a cycling center, but it's not a training center. And it was still in the process of getting built. Rumor has it, according to him, he's going to open the doors in September. And so we're going to try hard to get on his list. I didn't put it in the presentation because A, it's not a guaranteed, and B, I have no idea what he's going to charge for it. But he seems like a pretty reasonable guy. So if we can get into Johan's place and make it work for the group, that's another option. I'll know more as it kind of comes to pass. And I'm secretly hoping that I can get into the opening so I can go in September and see it. But it's this, this converted farmhouse, much like a lot of these places are. That's literally, it's between the Paterberg and the Quermont on Watermelon Strat. It's like the heart of Flanders, which works great because he's a Lion of Flanders, which he tells you. He left me a message the other day. Hello, Matt. This is Johan Museu, the Lion of Flanders. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Anyway, and there's just streets everywhere. It's like I said, I could go on all night, but I'll stop because I'm pretty chatty about this stuff. As you can probably guess I'm enthusiastic because
I can tell.
Right on, guys. If questions come up, I will send a response to this that has a link to the registration, but also has my email in it. And I'll put my phone number in it too. If you guys have anything you guys need, like I said, I care more about the experience than almost anything. And we've done a great job of making a cool little experience that's not corporate at all. I don't think it's corporate at all. But things like picking, if we want to do a different kit, we need to crowdsource amongst those going, hopefully someone who's a graphic designer. We lucked out because someone on Penn Velo was a graphic designer. So they did that design for us, which is just killer. It's just a gorgeous kit. I'm happy to redo that kit just because it's so pretty. But everything's up in the air as soon as we get, critical mass on attendance, then we start the fun part, which is building the routes. And like I said, hopefully, and my hope would be that we can get you guys enough experience that it's not like you're not on every road going, where the hell am I? And how does this relate to the race? Or how does this relate to anything else? When you start connecting the dots of, this road connects to that road, connects to this climb, connects to this city, there's the Meer der Gerhardsbergen chapel. And oh, by the way, you can find where you are in Belgium by just looking for churches. Just look for church steeples and you're pretty much, in fact, I'm sure Dan Smith has tons of stories because he's been to, at the minimum, I think at least Paris-Roubaix, back when RockShox was a thing at Paris-Roubaix because he worked for RockShox. So I'm sure Dan has many good stories to tell us too. The other thing, I think I talked about doing the Trappist Brewery tour or the Delirium tour. So again, a lot of the guys on the previous trips have been, I think beer connoisseur is a nice way to say they really enjoy beer. If that fit, and I haven't done it yet. In fact, one of my daughter's projects is to take all the receipts and figure out just how much money we spent on beer. But I think we've maybe spent more money on beer than food around the house, and which is amazing because, like I said, a 4-pack of St. Sixtus was like $8. So typically, cafes are €1.50, 1.5 euro for an espresso or a cappuccino, and €2 or €3 for a beer. So I guarantee we'll keep you fed and liquored up so that the bike riding doesn't hurt as much.
Take the pain of the cobbles away.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's just fun. Cool. Well, if there's no other questions at the moment, I will let you guys get about your weekend. And I really appreciate your taking whatever this is, a half hour, 45 minutes. I hope it wasn't more than an hour on a Friday night.
An hour.
I'll certainly be in touch after this
Great.
with more information and answer any question you guys have.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt.
Appreciate it, guys. Hope to see you in
guys.
Flanders and in the interim.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of, and I won't usurp Dan because he's a very good coach, but we also built, I built a training plan, an erg file based training plan for the guys that went last year, that basically takes the climbs of Flanders and creates, I think it was a 6 or an 8 week training plan. If you guys want that, I'm happy to add you to the mix on that. It's usually, I think it's 2 or 3 days a week of erg files to try to prepare you for the Flandrian climbs.
Yep. Yeah, I live in the Bay Area near Dan, and I do a significant amount of climbing every week. So
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, most guys do.
It's all climbing.
Yeah, it's a gift to live in the Bay Area because the climbs are so accessible and so surprisingly close to what you're going to do. I mean, they don't have cobbles on them, but by steepness, they're right on par with everything in Belgium. And
I leave my house and same at Dan's place. I leave my house and it's like a 10% grade just out the door.
yeah. Yeah. I was bragging to someone the other day. So I spent a bunch of time in Colorado now because my daughter's here. I was bragging to someone that, outside my door, I lived in Sunnyvale. There's 3 40-minute climbs or 30-minute climbs within 7 miles.
Yeah. So you said you live in Sunnyvale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do Montebello tomorrow morning.
Right on. I did my Everesting on Montebello.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah, it took 2 years. It took 2 tries to get it right. The first time I only made 10 laps and it takes
wow.
15.
I can't imagine doing 10 laps on that thing.
I know I think my total ride time was around 15 hours.
Wow.
And then there's a guy, and you guys may be familiar with him. His name is Charlie Martin. He's a local rider in the Bay Area. He did an Everesting every other day for like 10 days. So Charlie Martin is, I've never met him, but I know him peripherally through a friend of mine. He's maybe the craziest guy in the world, but apparently he's super nice and just loves to ride his bike. But he did an Everesting every other day for, I think, 10 days or a week.
Wow.
And he was over 1 million feet of climbing last year.
Wow.
I know.
I did 500,000 last year.
And it seemed like enough, right?
Yeah, I probably could have done a little more, but sometimes I just like getting out and going flat. For a
Yeah,
while.
well, we'll get you ready for Flanders with plenty of climbing, and it'd be even great to try to get everyone together beforehand and maybe do a couple of weekend rides, just to break the ice and get to know each other a little bit, and that kind of stuff is right up my wheelhouse. Although Dan lives in Bend, so he may not make it to every training ride.
Yeah.
Or
Probably
we could
not.
go to Bend and have training rides at Dan's house.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
happy to do it.
Daniel Van Alker and I, we did the waffle, actually the wafer a couple weeks ago. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, California cobbles.
Yeah, a couple of my riders did the full thing, and I think one of them was pretty close to 12 hours.
Yeah, we saw people coming in and it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
It's a slog, yeah.
Well, and the Grasshopper series isn't that much different. Those are hard too.
Yeah, I did 2 of the grasshoppers this year. Dan and I did one together, and it kept getting shorter and shorter the morning of because they didn't have permission to get on all the properties.
Oh, really?
So it ended up being like 50 or 60
Yeah.
miles. Yeah.
A little bit of a bust, but
Well, I can
Still
tell you,
good.
I missed the old Kaz course. That was the first one I did for Grasshoppers, and I thought that course was just about perfect.
Yeah.
I love old Kaz. And we've ridden up there a couple times since there. It's not quite the same when it's not a Grasshopper event and you're not chasing your buddies.
Yeah.
But that's a great area to ride too. So
Yeah, that's a fun. My wife and I we climbed up that last year. It was good. Had a great time. The weather was nice.
hey, Dan Smith, are you bringing your wife with you?
Probably not.
That's probably smart because she's a little too strong for that group.
That's true. That's very true.
She's a monster. She's the current national or world champion.
She's got the age group hour record.
That's
on the-
right.
she's
Age
current
group hour
time
record
trial.
for the world, right? Like world record.
wow.
Yeah, and then the
Wow.
current national champ for time trial.
Yeah, she can't go because although
Yeah.
we brought Jeremy Cottle last time and it worked out great because Jeremy was happy to sit on the front all day long at like 22 miles an hour. So it is smart to bring someone super strong. And if she doesn't go, Dan, it falls to you. So
No, it won't be me. We'll need to be Jeremy. That's for sure.
yeah, we'll see if we can get Jerry to come back. So with Jeremy and Mako's kid, we had plenty of horsepower on the front every day. It was great.
Yeah, Mr. Van Alker is a pretty good pull.
Pretty
too.
strong. Good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited because, as you can tell, I'm really excited because Johan was enthusiastic about riding with us again. And, you know, like I said, I think it's the high point, but the whole experience is a high point. So, but he's cool. And he's also good friends with Nico Matan. And Nico Matan is the guy that is the marketing guru for Quermont. So we'll definitely have plenty of Quermont beer. And the Quermont glasses are super cool. So every beer has its own glass. And the Quermont has little cobblestones on the base of the glass. And Quermont beer is 8.8% alcohol, which is the same as the old Quermont Climb. See, these are the sorts of inane
There you
things you
go.
know by going to Flanders.
When the alcohol content's steeper than the climb, then you know
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
And Quermont's not too bad a beer. So, you know, there's some really great restaurants we'll hit. There's a brasserie, which is a common name for a thing in Kortrijk that we'll probably go to after Paris-Roubaix. It's just delicious. It's so good. There's the St. Cornel, which their claim to fame is basically they bring you kind of a slab of meat. It's like more meat in one place than I've ever seen. And they tease you with some vegetables on the side, but it's basically an opportunity to get your protein. And just, you know, Bergs and Cobbles, another one of the places we had lunch, just really cool folks that just happen to like bikes. So
Yeah.
we'll certainly talk more. I know you guys have things to do.
Yeah. All right.
if
Well,
you
thank you
can,
so
but-
much again.
I'll catch up with you guys in a couple of days and we'll go from there. Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
sounds great. Thanks very
Thanks
much.
again, Matt.
Thanks for the time, guys. Appreciate it so much.
Take care.
See you.
Yeah, bye.